When reminiscing amongst both yourselves and your friends, what kinds of video games stick out to you when you type this into Google's search bar? That answer, I imagine, depending on your preferences and what you've been exposed to, will vary among every single one of you. Our experiences with gaming over the years may share a similarity or two, but there will always be a franchise or video game that you will look back on fondly with varying degrees of passion compared to the gamer right next to you, and that's okay. Unique experiences allow for individuality and distinctiveness to flourish among not only the games we remember, but ourselves and what each of us prefer. Reflecting on what's come before helps us understand how those past events paved the way for future events to topple into many occurrences that eventually form the present we've come to know. Sometimes, however, not everything will fall into place. Admirable attempts to create something new sometimes ultimately result in its collapse and disappearance. And those who can even remember that such attempts even happened at all will define and reflect on it with one word: obscurity. And that is something that, unfortunately, plagued the subject of today's video, Gravity Rush. This is a game I'd heard about around North America's 2012 PlayStation Vita launch date, thanks to an unboxing video I watched all that time ago of its Japanese edition, since, at the time, the North American version hadn't released yet. When I first saw a glimpse of it in said unboxing video, I didn't think much of it at the time due to my ecstatic passion for first-person shooters, the return of a classic platformer trilogy I was comfortable and familiar with, and most importantly, above all, I didn't own a PlayStation Vita. In addition to said unboxing video, 2012 was also the year that debuted the game that folks cited at the time as a Super Smash Bros. Clone, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. Despite the game's vast roster of PlayStation characters to choose from and brawl with, that didn't mean that it had no room for more additions to be made. Cat and Dusty were one of them, as they infiltrated the roster in February 2013, thus giving many PlayStation 3 gamers a taste of what the Gravity Queen can do. And who knows, perhaps one of you saw Cat in this game and said, hey, I want to get a PlayStation Vita and try out Gravity Rush myself now. Or maybe your situation was like my own, a PlayStation Vita-less gamer. Gravity Rush, however, and thank the gods this happened, wasn't going to remain exclusively stuck on its original hardware, and the developers at Japan Studio possessed a desire to expand their audience, which brings us to 2016. With the official release of Gravity Rush Remastered for the PlayStation 4, my preferences had become much more varied and relaxed compared to the admittedly tightly wound range I possessed 4 years prior, which resulted in a deeper rekindling of my appreciation for the single-player experience, thus making Gravity Rush compatible with my preferences, though there were still remnants from said tightly wound range that remained, and the passion for that genre was still burning brightly at the time. Now, from what I can recall, when I got wind of this remaster launching back in 2016, my first reaction was, hey, I remember seeing this game. I saw this on an unboxing video 4 years ago. I can finally play it myself now. I'm happy to say that when I got to play it myself for the first time, I loved it. Open world gameplay has, without a doubt, astronomically caught the interest of millions of players across a variety of different genres, with many studios expressing their own unique vision and take of the formula to separate themselves in comparison to the next guy. The same can be said for the superhero genre that Gravity Rush shares with its respective competitors, whether they came from this generation, generations prior, or the generation that's just about to begin. Now, right off the bat, I want to state that despite having an appreciation for this game, the game gameplay, in retrospect, is somewhat weaker in comparison to its successor, but that doesn't mean that what we have here is unsalvageable by any means. After all, if it wasn't for this game, its own mechanics couldn't have possibly been built upon down the road for its sequel. Regardless, how does the first Gravity Rush hold up as an initial stepping stone for its own franchise? Starting off with the game's unique selling point, the ability to shift gravity. While I do find it somewhat funny for Kat to be shifting into the air in different directions, only for the game having not a single response to people getting accidentally rolled away with her, that's a small oversight that I don't really mind, since I know Japan Studio and Sucker Punch both had different visions for their own games. But since I'm not precisely adjusting my playstyle and actions for a good or bad karma meter, I love the sense of exhilarating freedom I feel when tapping the R1 button to get Kat off the ground, then having her fly into any direction I desire, with another tap of the R1 button as I guide where she floats. And it feels even better when the game is encouraging me to explore as much as I can. While marveling at the velocity being shown with Kat's hair and scarf skirmishing about, there are some things of course to keep in mind, but don't you worry. For one, there's no fall damage. And two, while the game does have a limit on how long you can remain in the air, the thing I just mentioned a few sentences ago about how it encourages exploration ties into the gems and upgrade system, which in turn also ties into the missions. When completing missions from both the side and story category, the game will react as it triumphantly declares via a music cue and text pop-up that your reputation has increased. With each reputation increase, the levels available for upgrading your abilities also increases. While there is an initial limit as to how high your reputation can go, that can go even higher with the side missions the game offers. So, you're probably sitting there rightfully asking, okay, so to get to each mission I have to fly for an extensive period of time? What if I don't want to do that every single time? What if I just want to get straight into the action? Well, thankfully the developers thought the same thing and compensated for it via the manholes scattered around Hexaville. That's also directly linked to Kat's room, aka your save and costume swap room. And as stated before, like the number of gems you collect for your abilities, exploring every nook and cranny is worth it and can definitely pay off for future endeavors. Inevitably, as the game progresses, with each passing mission, a healthy variety of objectives would prompt a switch up of different playstyles, to the point where the game will take players out of their comfort zones and make them adapt to what's happening. They can range from things such as, but not limited to, disabling your ability to shift gravity as a result of the environment's circumstances and/or challenges, Dusty getting sick causing Kat's powers to drain rapidly, etc. This is something I appreciate since, though while I'm entertained by the gameplay itself, it's nice to be faced with challenges that sometimes places me in uncomfortable, powerless situations, to challenge the variety of knowledge I have about the game as opposed to using the same tactics over and over again. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it does get a little spooky when I can't fight back. Not survival horror spooky, mind you, but spooky to where I'm intrigued by mystery and/or depth of how deep a rabbit hole goes. Where am I? Who am I? What am I? These are major questions that roared within the mind of an amnesiac nameless woman that we've come to know as Kat, who could not remember the events that led up to her waking up in a small park in Hexaville. And these major questions, though Kat devotes her energy to helping those she can, as shown in the side and story missions, remain throughout both in this game and the second. But what are we able to find out about Kat with the time we spend with her in this game? And how does the game engage players to what's occurring? Let's first start with something that's wholly unique about Gravity Rush, its style and presentation. Given how far the gaming industry has come, it's allowed developers to be given more tools at their disposal to make their games feel more real with the use of voice acting and cutscenes. But Gravity Rush is slightly different and unique in this regard. First off, the dialect. According to Keiichiro Toyama, the dialect in this game was inspired by quote-unquote bande dessinée, which he cites as term for drawn strips from France. Though I need to rely on subtitles to understand what it is they're saying at all, it adds that unique flair to the experience that screams, This is the world of Gravity Rush. However, the French-like language isn't used throughout the game 100% to present itself in certain regards. The thing that remains omnipresent both in this game and the second is the game's use of comic strips as opposed to fully animated cutscenes, which is a style I wholly appreciate since it contributes to Gravity Rush's unique identity in terms of engaging with the game. In addition, while the game didn't forget to include small things such as the sound of turning pages over, and character grunts or small hints of this French-like dialect, you can also backtrack and turn pages back if you feel that you've flipped through them too fast. Though the same can't be said regarding in-game conversations when traveling the world. Regardless, the art style featured in this game is really nice to look at and makes both the world and its characters feel alive. Moving on from that quality of life decision that gives Gravity Rush its own unique flair, let's talk music. Not only does Gravity Rush feature some phenomenal music, but the music, notably within Hexaville's open world, packs the most punch. Every single section of the city has its own unique identity engraved into the music, which in turn complements their own unique visuals, whether if they're filled with leisurely attractions, rugged pollution ran by people desperate for work, flourishing life representing the busyness of the big city, and last but not least, normality and solitude among residents living normal lives. The same goes for our favorite protagonist, Kat the Gravity Queen. Let's dial back a bit, back to the park where Kat wakes up. All she has at her side are both her future partner Dusty and a few measly steps up some stairs. Her confusion and the shock of her lack of memory only continue to perpetuate as she was requested for help by a man to save his son from a gravity storm. She learns very quickly, despite previously brushing him off and failing to recall that she can shift gravity despite denying what the man previously said. While everything didn't turn out as Kat had hoped in the end, there was no other way to go. She could only turn to what was in front of her, her partner Dusty, and an uncertain future inside a town she did not understand. Despite her superpowers that legitimately give her an edge in defending herself, taking on a wild phenomenon like the Nevi and going where nobody can go, sometimes she's not considered a part of the other, per se. She's treated normally, and it helps in displaying Kat's grounded nature as a character, as opposed to being an out-of-this-world force that's above and better than everyone. Actually, let's go back to that for a moment. Yes, Kat grounds herself and helps whoever she can, wherever she is. Even if she sometimes doesn't know what she's getting into, I love her for that very reason. She doesn't do these things for medals or a sense of honor or power. She does it because she feels it's the right thing to do. As previously stated though, with these unique abilities, there's a journey that only Kat can go on, despite the support she receives from distant allies, which in turn complements the journey the player has with Kat as they continue engaging with the story's material, which for the most part serves as building blocks slowly peeling back the layers of the questions Kat and maybe even a player themselves desperately seek answers for. And while we're given the basic foundation alluding to Kat's origins in this game, its relevancy and usefulness are 100% valid to bear in mind for the sequel. While taking that journey, like every individual case that Kat runs into, since it's in her nature to help people, she runs into others she sometimes doesn't fully understand herself, which often results in a lot of dispute and conflict arising, at first anyway. Regardless, they contribute to Kat's journey and they're worth briefly discussing. So I'll bring to light one of the most poignant characters of them all, Raven. Initially an enemy of Kat, they're able to reconcile and set aside their differences once they were caught in a situation that they both needed to work together to overcome. The very reason why Raven attacks Kat in the first place is actually tied to a few other characters as well. Alderman Dinelica, Gade, also known as a creator, one of many, and Zaza, along with the lost tribe of Botum, aka City at the Edge of the World. For reasons we didn't fully understand yet, not in this game anyway, Raven was fixated on a promise made by Dinelica, a promise that if Kat didn't fix Hexaville, Dinelica would send for a rescue team to save the kids, though knowing him, that was probably a fucking lie.
So that was a fucking lie.
So what about the creators like Gade and Cyania? Though their power is both infinite yet limited, they don't outright tell Kat everything. There's mystery still hanging in the air as they offer the best support they can, even if some of them don't pull any punches when it comes to this stuff.
Just your evil. Best ibran gushawin bitorever. Just brace your situation. People go just bread. You do fetch bread.
Well, you must be fun at parties. Damn. The last thing I want to cover is the final segment of the game. The thing I find most interesting is the dramatic tone in music, which for the record is titled Repression and Peace. No matter where you travel, no matter the desire you may possess to escape this new militaristic rule that's shadowed over Hexaville ever since Kat's journey to the Lost Tribe began over fetching a letter, the music is always there and effectively represents Hexaville's transformation under the rule of the newly appointed Mayor Dinelica. When traveling to, say, Plaisjun, for example, I'd expect to hear that catchy, upbeat piano tune that I'd heard earlier on in the game, but no, there's only that music that persists despite the change in location. The same of course applies to the other districts, and is only heightened by conversations representing the tension that some people feel under the new rule. And as the game's story comes to a close, Dinelica tries to flex his power a bit, and his overconfident backfires heavily. Hell, the man was arrogant enough to approve Enevi as his new toy's central core. This leaves Kat and the remaining forces that still held a shred of care of what's going to happen, unlike Dinelica's sacrifices must be made mindset, to reverse the situation that Dinelica created, despite ironically claiming that it was their new savior. And as I reiterate, from the very beginning, Kat's dedication to selflessly help others in danger not only gets her into conflict with others such as Unica, who, to be fair, was lost due to her upbringings as a soldier, following orders without question, but it also motivates me a lot more to take Kat's side. Though the situation dooms her if only for a moment, that didn't mean she needed to stay doomed forever, even if it was in the cards. She's got friends nearby who, I would argue, had been inspired by Kat's selflessness to do the right thing, even if others would frown upon them by threatening them with consequence. In the end, despite the chaos and despite the initial disagreements that left everyone filled with panic, disarray, and injury, they're finally able to reverse Dinelica's mistake and restore Kat's rightful status as a hero, the Gravity Queen of Hexaville. Overall, when thinking back to this game, again, despite there existing much more fierce competition contained within Gravity Rush's own franchise, it still holds up pretty well and has honestly become an instant classic. It serves as a great introduction to not only the world and characters, but also the unique gameplay. It was a lot of fun to revisit this game briefly, and if you've not played this game, I'd highly recommend it since, believe me, you're gonna need the basics down in terms of what story beats have been planted here, along with the basic knowledge of the gameplay, to get into what I'd say is my favorite game of this generation. But I'll need to save that conversation for next time. For now, I think it's about time I wrap this up. Before we go, however, I'd like to give a shout out to Gravity Rush Central. Whoever runs this account, thank you. You've definitely brought a lot of attention to Gravity Rush across the internet, a lot more than anyone I know. And I'm happy that to this day, you're still doing what you do. And I'm sorry that things couldn't be different, even if you and the rest of the community tried so hard to change it, but it is what it is. Anyway, the links to the website, Twitter, and Instagram will be placed down in the description. I'd highly recommend checking them out while also continuing to spread the word of this marvelously underrated franchise. Alright everyone, that's all for today. Thanks for watching all the way through. The next video for sure will definitely be a review on Gravity Rush 2, so please look forward to that, and I hope to put it out on the channel as soon as I'm able to with the time I have available. Until then, remember, don't forget Gravity Rush. And I hope you have yourselves a great day. Take care and goodbye for now.